19-year-old, the suspected driver had been drinking before getting behind the wheel.
You don't feel any different than being 79 so far. Who knows what another year will bring.
If you've followed mountain men, you've likely admired Tom Oar, the rugged soul who spent decades surviving in the wild with his wife.
I'm pretty happy with the life that we live. Who could ask for more than that, you know?
But what could make someone abandon that dream life of peace and isolation?
He's never had to give up things. He just does what he does.
Tom's story takes a surprising turn that reveals the harsh reality behind the wilderness fantasy. What he went through might just change the way you see freedom, solitude, and the price of resilience. The defeat of Tom Oar. Tom Oar's story isn't just about living off the grid or crafting buckskin gear. It's about a man who quietly built a life rooted in hard choices, love, and the kind of toughness that doesn't need to be loud. For years, Tom was the heart of mountain men on the History Channel, a face viewers connected with deeply. But beyond the cameras and rustic cabins, his life tells a deeper story, one shaped by grit, resilience, and letting go of things that once defined him. Tom was born in 1943 in Rockford, Illinois, into a family that already had deep roots in frontier life. His father, Cheeky Oar, performed in America's Wild West shows, a living connection to a fading era. That influence wasn't just surface level. From a young age, Tom absorbed those values: self-reliance, tradition, and staying connected to the land. As a teenager and young adult, Tom didn't follow an easy path. He went into rodeo, not as a hobby, but as a full-time bronc rider. That meant broken bones, tough rides, and a life lived on the edge. But it also meant learning how to read wild animals, stay calm under pressure, and push forward no matter what. That mindset would later carry over into every aspect of his off-grid lifestyle. After more than 20 years on the rodeo circuit, Tom made a quiet but major pivot. He walked away from that adrenaline-filled life and chose something entirely different: isolation, simplicity, and hands-on work in the deep forests of Montana. With his wife Nancy by his side, he settled in the remote Yaak River Valley, far from the world most of us know. There he built a life few could imagine. No big stores, no modern luxuries, just raw land, hard winters, and a commitment to doing things the old way. Tom became an expert in tanning hides, using Native American methods to craft clothing and tools by hand. He wasn't doing it to be on TV. He was doing it because it's who he is. But even the strongest lives carry a quiet cost. From rodeo to wilderness. Tom Oar isn't just a mountain man from mountain men. His story runs much deeper. Long before the cabins, wilderness, and trapping, Tom's life was all about dust, grit, and the rodeo. His journey began in Illinois, where his father, Chike, performed in a Wild West show. That early exposure shaped Tom's path. While most kids were at home or in schoolyards, Tom was out on the road, trick-riding horses across the Midwest, from Michigan to Missouri, in front of live crowds. By the age of 15, Tom's father and brother had stepped away from the show, but Tom didn't quit. He wasn't just dressing the part, he was living it. In fact, Tom knew he wanted to be a bull rider by the time he was just 3 years old. Things got real around age 10 when Jerry Partlow, a rodeo producer they worked with, let Tom ride a steer in the chute. That kind of opportunity isn't given lightly. It was a nod to his courage and talent, and the beginning of a lifelong identity. But Tom's life didn't stop at rodeo fame. What makes his story powerful is how those early experiences stayed with him and eventually transformed into something just as intense, but quieter, a life in the wilderness. In interviews, like the one he gave to American Cowboy, it's clear Tom's not putting on a show. His lifestyle is real, grounded in survival and tradition. Take tanning hides, for example. Tom uses a traditional method called brain tanning, where the animal's own brain is used to soften and preserve its hide. The result is soft, breathable buckskin that's as practical as it is historic. He wears it, works in it, and even makes gear from it. His handmade moccasins aren't for display. They're for walking miles through rough country. Alongside his wife Nancy, Tom continues this old-world craft. Together, they sell their work at events called rendezvous, gatherings that recreate the 1840s fur trade era. These aren't just craft fairs. They're full-blown historical reenactments where people live, trade, and dress like mountain men and early traders. Tom and Nancy bring their handmade goods, sharing pieces of a life that feels like it's from another time. Through it all, Tom Oar's story remains one of authenticity. From the rodeo chutes to the snowy forests of Montana, he's always lived on his own terms, raw, honest, and deeply connected to a way of life that most people today have forgotten. Tom Oar's frontier life. His journey into the spotlight began in the early 2010 when the creators of Mountain Men discovered his way of life in Montana. But what followed wasn't just another reality TV storyline. It was a raw and genuine look into a vanishing lifestyle. Unlike shows that rely on scripted tension or over-the-top drama, Mountain Men stood apart. It offered something that felt rare, real people living real lives in some of the most unforgiving parts of America. The show didn't glamorize wilderness living. It showed it for what it is: cold, hard, and unrelenting. There's no comfort unless you've worked for it. Firewood needs to be chopped before the snow comes. Traps need to be checked in bitter cold. Clean water and enough food are never guaranteed. For Tom, this wasn't a performance. He wasn't acting for the camera or trying to build a brand. He was simply being himself, doing what he'd done for decades. Viewers were drawn to him because he was the opposite of artificial. Tom's calm presence, his quiet humor, and his steady hands told a story that didn't need dramatic music or voiceovers. Every episode captured pieces of his life: setting traps, crafting gear, chopping wood, fixing problems before winter arrived. His rhythm never felt rushed, and his approach never felt forced. He didn't survive for the cameras. He lived because he knew no other way. As the seasons passed, something else began to surface, something that hit home for many viewers. Tom was aging. The physical demands of living off the land were beginning to show on his body. Movements slowed. Recovery took longer. But the determination never faded. In fact, watching Tom grow older out there in the wilderness made his story even more powerful. He wasn't just tough. He was deeply committed to the life he'd built. That's what made Tom Oar different. He wasn't just a survivalist. He was a man aging with dignity in one of the hardest environments imaginable. Fans didn't watch just to see if he'd make it through another winter. They watched because he represented something steady, something lost in the noise of modern life. His grit didn't come with bravado. His strength didn't need attention. He reminded people of resilience that doesn't ask for praise, just the chance to keep going, one season at a time. Mountain Man's toughest battle. After over 4 decades of living deep in the Montana mountains, Tom Oar, known for his self-sufficient lifestyle and strength, now faces a challenge he can't tackle with tools or survival skills. In Season 11, Episode 4 of Mountain Men, titled Heart and Soul, we find Tom stepping away from his rugged routine for a reason that's both serious and deeply personal. His health is failing. It started with something he couldn't ignore. One night, Tom suddenly woke up struggling to breathe. It wasn't the kind of discomfort you push through. It was a wake-up call. His wife, Nancy, saw it too, when she suggested a trip into town to get it checked out. And Tom didn't argue. She knew it was serious. Tom had never been one to visit doctors. "I've always been healthy," he said, until now. The two made the long, rough 80-mile trip from their cabin in Yak to the nearest medical facility in Libby. After several tests, the results were unsettling. Tom's heart wasn't working the way it should, and fluid had started collecting in his lungs. Doctors put him on medication, gave him a heart monitor, and told him to wear a defibrillator vest as a backup plan in case something went wrong far from help. For a man who built his life on independence and physical labor, those instructions weren't just medical, they were life-altering. Even then, Tom tried to adjust. But a few months later, in October 2024, his health took another hit. This time, it was worse. Another hospital visit confirmed what was becoming impossible to deny. The life Tom and Nancy had built in the wilderness was no longer safe or sustainable. That realization didn't come easily. The homestead wasn't just a place to live. It was their dream. It held memories of tough winters, handmade tools, and quiet mornings that belonged only to them. But survival now looked different. It meant being near doctors. It meant being near their son, Chad. In 2020, they made the difficult decision to leave Montana and relocate to Florida. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was letting go of a lifetime. But in doing so, they found something else. Time with family, stability, and a new kind of peace. Tom's story reminds us that even the toughest mountain men aren't immune to time, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept the next chapter. Living off the edge. Tom Oar and his wife Nancy didn't just play at wilderness living. They lived it for over 50 years deep in the Montana backcountry. No shortcuts, no safety nets, just hard-earned survival, day after day, season after season. While most of us rely on modern comforts, the Oars chose a life of hunting their own food, tanning hides by hand, and braving winters that felt more like war zones than seasons. If you've ever caught yourself dreaming of getting away from it all, their story might sound like a fantasy. But living off the grid isn't some peaceful retreat. It's a test of endurance every single day. Their life shows what it actually takes to break away from modern society. Spoiler, it's not for the faint-hearted. Winters out there stretch from October to May, with temperatures dropping so low your breath freezes mid-air. Roads vanish under feet of snow, turning even simple tasks, getting firewood, checking on animals, or finding medicine, into dangerous undertakings. There are no nearby clinics or hospitals. A fall, a fever, or a cut that gets infected can spiral fast, especially as they've gotten older. When help is hours, or even days, away, you have to become your own first responder. Survival in the wild doesn't just demand physical strength, it's also financially risky. Living off the land doesn't mean living for free. The Oars relied on selling handmade moccasins, coats, and leather goods to get by. Some years it worked, other years, not so much. And while the TV series Mountain Men brought them some attention, it also pulled them into the spotlight, something they never wanted. Then there's the isolation. Living miles from the nearest neighbor sounds peaceful until you face a crisis. Out there are no quick visits from friends, no community potlucks, no backup when something goes wrong. Holidays are quiet. Emergencies are lonelier. In that solitude, their partnership became their lifeline. Their bond wasn't just emotional, it was survival. But as they aged, the burden grew heavier. The snow is deeper. The firewood is heavier. Trips to town are more exhausting. And the question loomed larger every year. How long can we keep doing this? Tom and Nancy's life wasn't about escaping reality. It was about facing it head-on their own terms. Their story isn't a romantic escape from modern life. It's a raw look at what freedom really costs and why, for some people, it's still worth every ounce of effort. Alive and unseen. For over a decade, Mountain Men has shown us what it really means to live off the grid. No fancy gadgets, no shortcuts, just raw survival, day in and day out. The people on this show don't just play a role, they live it. And among all the rugged faces, Tom Oar has always stood out. Not just because of what he can do, but because of who he is. Now, heading into Season 12, fans have one burning question. Is Tom Oar still with us? At 80 years old, Tom is still going strong. Executive producer Chris Richardson confirmed that Tom is back this season, still trapping, still crafting, and still passing on his hard-earned wisdom to the next generation in Northwest Montana. He's become a real mentor out there, Richardson said. But he's not the only one facing new challenges. Eustace Conway leaves his Turtle Island homestead to take on projects that push even his limits. Jake Herrick and his dogs go after mountain lions threatening Montana ranches, only this time, the snow is deeper, the terrain more dangerous, and Jake ends up stranded on a mountain overnight. Meanwhile, brothers Kid and Harry Urin, along with a few new faces, continue to carve out their survival stories in the harshest corners of America. But let's be honest, fans have been especially focused on Tom. Since the show's debut in 2012, Tom became more than a cast member. He was the calm in the storm, a steady hand in a world that never stops throwing punches. But as Tom entered his late 70s, fans began to worry. Not about wild animals or brutal winters, but about something simpler and more human: his age. By 2020, the concern turned into full-blown confusion. A fake obituary made its way online, convincing many that Tom had passed away. It was detailed, convincing, and shared widely. Tributes poured in. Social media lit up. But none of it was true. And just when things calmed down, 2024 brought the rumors back, this time saying he died peacefully in Florida. Yet other sources claimed he was alive, just retired, and living quietly. So what's real? Despite all the noise, reliable reports confirm that Tom Oar is very much alive. While he's appearing less on Mountain Men, he hasn't disappeared. He's simply choosing a quieter life, away from the cameras, but still connected to the wild that shaped him. And for fans who've followed his journey all these years, that's all the reassurance they need. From wilderness to Florida. Tom Oar has built a name for himself far from the comforts of modern life. In 2025, his net worth is estimated to be between $200,000 and $250,000, a figure that might surprise many. People often assume that living off the grid means scraping by, but Tom's earnings tell a different story. Most of that money comes from his time on the History Channel's long-running reality series. While exact numbers vary, it's reported that Tom earned around $15,000 per episode. For someone who spent decades tanning hides and hunting in the woods, that's not a small amount. His appearance on the show didn't just bring him a paycheck, it turned him into a symbol of self-reliance and old-school grit. Then there's Nancy Oar, Tom's wife and quiet partner in everything. While her individual net worth isn't listed anywhere, she was more than just part of the background. Nancy was right there in the thick of it, making crafts, living in harsh conditions, and standing by Tom through it all. She also appeared in the series and helped with the handmade goods they sold. Her role was just as crucial in shaping their lifestyle and their income. But even the most resilient people have their limits. After being on Mountain Men since its early days in 2012, Tom eventually decided it was time to walk away. The remote Yaak River Valley, where he and Nancy lived for over 3 decades, had become too much. Age, isolation, and the physical demands of the wilderness caught up with him. So they packed up and moved to Florida. It was a major shift. From snow-packed forests to warm coastal living, Tom and Nancy had to readjust to everything: traffic, neighbors, grocery stores, and all the things they'd gone without for 35 years. It wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a whole new life. But after a lifetime of survival, learning how to adapt was second nature to them. Tom didn't leave behind a legacy of money or fame. He left behind something more meaningful, a glimpse into a vanishing way of life, and a reminder that simplicity, skill, and strength still matter. Whether he's tanning hides or tending a backyard in Florida, Tom Oar remains the same man, one who did things the hard way and never pretended otherwise. Tom Oar's resilient journey. Tom Oar isn't just another TV personality. He's the heart of Mountain Men, someone who's lived the kind of life most of us only hear stories about. Deep in the Montana wilderness, far from the noise and rush of modern life, Tom carved out a living using old-school skills like trapping, tanning hides, and crafting with his hands. But behind that rugged lifestyle is a story of quiet heartbreak, strength, and a family that's been through more than most realize. Before he became a familiar face on television, Tom lived a different chapter with his first wife, Janice Fraser. Their relationship brought 2 children into the world, Keely and Chad. But in 2015, tragedy struck when Keely passed away, leaving a painful mark on the family. For Tom, dealing with the loss of his daughter was already unbearable. Doing it while being in the public eye made it even harder. That grief didn't play out in long speeches or emotional breakdowns. It was carried in silence, in the kind of sorrow that stays just beneath the surface. Even through that loss, the Oars didn't fall apart. Chad, Tom's son, quietly found his own path. Far from Montana, he built a new life in Florida with his wife, Kim Burnett. Together, they run a successful horse training center in Ocala, known as the horse capital of the world. It's a life that looks completely different from the ruggedness of Tom's world, but at its core, it's still about care, dedication, and hard work. Fans of Mountain Men will remember one of the most touching moments: Tom's birthday celebration. It wasn't flashy, but it captured the simple joys of his life and the love surrounding him. Not long after, Tom suddenly stopped appearing on the show. Viewers were left wondering, had he stepped away for good? That absence said a lot about aging, change, and how even the strongest people sometimes need to step back. Tom's story isn't one he tells alone. His older brother, Jack Oar, also appears on the show from time to time. Jack is the quieter one, not looking for attention, but his calm presence and strong bond with Tom add depth to the show. Their relationship reminds viewers of a kind of loyalty and connection that doesn't need big words to be felt. Off-camera, Tom, Jack, and Nancy, Tom's wife, run the Willow Bend trading post. Through it, they share handcrafted goods, moccasins, leather shirts, and knives that reflect their way of life. People don't just buy these items because of the show. They buy them because they're real, made with care, and rooted in tradition. Tom's life isn't about fame. It's about living on your own terms, holding on to what matters, and staying true to your roots, even when the world around you keeps changing. We hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more amazing stories.